artist who you are listening now at the moment?
Well, I listen to just about everything because I get an idea of, I listen to a lot of radio. I read a lot, so you find out what's going on. You're listening to contemporary artists. You're listening to other people I've listened to for years and their acts. I just like things that are very, very committed. I like things that are very something. I don't mind. I listen to a big variety of things, really. And obviously, for years, my kids are now in their 20s, and younger, so I get to listen to just about everything that's going on, I suppose. I don't buy many albums now because I just can't keep up with it. And obviously, with the internet the way it is, people are interested in looking at individual tracks rather than albums anyway. I won't be making albums very much longer because it doesn't make sense. It makes much more sense to put up maybe put up two or three new tracks on iTunes every month. That doesn't make sense to make an album. Some people want an album, some people don't.
Yeah. Well, maybe the older generation, they still want an album.
Yeah.
So your records are not in the shops anymore?
What, the old ones or the new ones?
Yeah, the new ones.
The new ones, not yet. The concept is, first of all, I make a special edition, which has got films and music, and I sell that. People can only get that directly from me or from my website, because then you're making direct contact with the fans, so the fans get to hear it first. So none of the tracks from that album hasn't been played on radio yet. But now once the fans have had a chance to buy it, then you do that. There's a chance to get it, and they get it at gigs and things like that. Then there'll be an audio release. Basically, by the time we're building up to it now. I'm just finishing doing a digital aggregate deal in America, so that digitally worldwide it's, because that's your big digital record shop. So I'm just doing that, and that'll all come to pass very early in the new year. We haven't written off the idea of shops altogether, retail altogether, but at this stage it makes sense to make sure that you just got to make sure people know what you've done and make it available by whatever means you want, and you can do it through. Obviously, there's all ways of mail ordering things, all the different shops that we all know about, the Amazons and everybody else. They're the big record shops, really. And there's only a few flagship record shops, certainly in England. If you put stuff retail, you for the most part, it's a lot of effort. It doesn't seem to make very much sense. People can find you now, as opposed to you having to find them.
So you also have to create your own platform.
Yeah, but I think that's quite good. I mean, the big problem with the internet is that it gives you a terrific possibility of creating this wonderful platform, but the same is true for about 25 million other artists. So I always refer to it's like an enormous record shop where you can't find anything. If you know what you're looking for, you can go in and find it. But you can't browsing the internet is like reading the Bible before breakfast.
I think also tonight in the audience there are people who weren't born when you were in charge.
Hopefully, yes. What I find exciting is to play to an audience of mixed age groups. Because I mean, my band, when I play with the band, my band are the same age as my kids. For instance, in Germany, far more students come to see me now than an older audience. And we try to reflect that. I mean, in terms of prices and things for shows. If you overprice shows, you don't get a young audience. Simple. Because they haven't got the money to come. And I think that's a great shame. And what I do, I give out a lot of energy from the stage, and I like to get back an energy from the audience. And the younger audiences are usually quite surprised when they see shows that I do, because it's based on enthusiasm. Because I never become cynical about things musical.
Okay. Do you still have contact with other members of Fischer's Head?
Yeah. I mean, Steve Skolnick, who was the original keyboard player, was my big friend. Then we argued and we threw him out of Fischer's Head. He fell out, but we're great mates, yes. I still see the drummer, Steve Little, as an antiquarian book dealer in Bristol, and I keep contact with him, and the bass player occasionally. But I mean, yeah, I know them. But their lives are so different, because I've been in entertainments for more than 30 years, and they kind of stopped doing it, well, ages ago, like 25 years ago.
So are there plans to go back on stage together? Or?
No, it looked like an old people's home.
Yeah.
Definitely not. I think it was really sad. I watched, because I was a huge fan of the band Magazine, and still am. Howard Devote is a genius. But I find it really weird that they're going on, and this is not being rude, they're playing great, they sound great, but why do they go and do what they were doing in 1981? I can't see any point. Why don't they do what they do now? And it just looks very odd. I think it can be extremely undignified. The bands I've seen that are good, Shelley's great. The Buzzcocks are still very, very good. And they were signed to a label with me. I was signed to UA with them. And they seem to be into it. But I mean, since I've made 16 albums since then. I mean, there's some classic material, yeah. But why would you play it and do it exactly the same? If you're into nostalgia and if you're into oldies, then that's fine. Once you do that, you're stuffed. The prime examples of people I've always admired who've gone through, I suppose the obvious example would be, well, there's Elvis Costello, because he's kept going. He's a brilliant songwriter. He's obviously very, very successful. He makes some brilliant records and some tedious ones, but he's a great songwriter. But then you get the people like Nick Cave, I've got a huge admiration for, who's just got better and better and better. And you know, he might include some older things in what he does, but that's the way it is. And so his approach and his personality is very different from mine, but his mind space is similar. When we were very successful in the early days on a major record company, I was never comfortable with that, because there's all sorts of politics that are involved in working with major record companies. And I like the idea of being, you know, the biggest possible independent act I can be. What's happened over the last couple of years is that the work that I've been doing has been picked up by different people and by a different generation. And also, I think, as I explained before, for instance, in New York, I'm more known for writing and for poetry than I am for music. So it's a different way around. But so the music's just beginning to be of interest in America.
Nick, the name Nick Cave, I think you have also in common that he's also a writer now.
Yeah, he is. He's always written quite a lot of stuff. Yeah, and also what he does is very word based. What I've done is always very word based. And I've actually, 10 years ago when I did the Big Beat Poetry record, that was a mixture of it's 10 years ago. That was a mixture of trip hop rhythms and poetry. And so a lot of people don't know those records as well. But I mean, for instance, in a show now, I'll include, depending on what I feel like, I'll include things from all sorts of different eras.
Yeah, the dancing aspect is always quite important in your music.
Well, it's quite funny, yeah. I mean, I obviously...
You're a big dancer?
Yeah, I'm quite a big dancer. I started as a drummer, and I was into reggae and blue beat. That's where I come from. And most of my friends were from West London, so they were all black guys from West London. So when punk music finished and the new wave arrived, it incorporating reggae and everything, that's what we'd always been doing. I never played older style rock music because I couldn't, because it was a technical thing, and I loved the energy of punk, which lasted briefly.
Yeah, but you were not a punker, I guess.
No, not really. I mean, we played all the punk clubs, obviously. Yeah, I mean, but in New York they described us as art punks, which I think was about right, and they put us together with bands like Talking Heads, and XTC and Television, which is good.
Intelligent music, maybe, or
more words.
Yeah.
More words. I wouldn't say necessarily more intelligent. Mm-hmm. But there was also bands from Boston, like Mission of Burma, and obviously bands in England that were more experimental. Wire, Gang of Four, and so that was a different thing. So they weren't. I wouldn't call Fisher's Head all this. I wouldn't call them new wave bands, really. I wouldn't call them punk bands, but they were around at the same time.
So, and after Amsterdam, where do you go?
Well, I've got to go back. Well, I haven't been back home for such a long time. I've got to go back and sort out all my administration. I've got to make sure that the record is going to be, the music is going to be seen and heard, and so therefore I'm working out a way of distributing it that I like at the moment, and that's what we're doing. So I say that I've sorted out the digital distribution, and we can work out everything else now. So basically, it's admin. I've got a month's admin.
And you all have to do it yourself?
Yeah, I do all of it. Yeah. And I book all the stuff as well. So that's a lot of that. But then I'm travelling again a lot in the new, because in February I'm back in New York. Because instead of, I don't tour from town to town to town, because I do something more eclectic. So I'll be in New York for 10 days. I do 2 concerts. One's totally solo and noisy, and one was with other musicians. I do 2 poetry shows. I've got a couple of lectures. And I also I go into a club. You know when people do a club performance, if you go and see a dance act in a club and they do 3 or 4 songs. Well, I go into clubs and I improvise poetry with DJs, and I love doing that. Okay. So it gives me a chance, because I like clubs, and it gives me a chance to get in there, and that's awesome. I like doing that. So I do a number of things.
Okay. And you told me that you also want to work together with Yoko Ono?
I'd love to work with Yoko Ono. I follow Yoko Ono's Twitter, but I find what she does very interesting.
Okay, so there are concrete plans already?
No, No, there's several people I'm supposed to work with, but I've got to catch up with everything that I'm doing at the moment, and I'm working towards a project next year which involves a lot of coordination as well. So, which is not music, that's film.
Okay. Thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
your time.
Thank you. Cheers.